Good afternoon. School is one of those things that if you ask kids to list some of their favorite things, they'll probably never list it, especially if something is super stressful. Take the weeks leading up to my first AP exam, AP World History. Those weeks were ones of misery, tension, and grappling for the motivation to study. If you were to ask me what some of my favorite things were, I would list sleep, more sleep, and definitely not hours of studying. Although Mrs. Gerbasi said my review book would be my best friend, I was looking at it more as my mortal enemy. However, she was right, and she is what got me through those grueling weeks of self-torture. School is one of those things that you have a love-hate relationship with. Some days it's amazing, and other days it's, oh my gosh, can this day just end already? However, when you have a teacher that you admire, when talking to them makes your day feel 10 times better, really when you see their face in the hallway, that is when school can become something you look forward to. Mrs. Gerbasi was one of those teachers that just got me. She matched my strangeness, but more importantly, she matched my determination. The second I walked up to her and said, I want a 5 on this exam, how do I do it? And instead of being like, the exam is 4 months away, you need to relax, she immediately told me to get a review book, name it, sleep with it under my pillow, adore it, and make it my best friend. Anytime I had any questions, worries, or jokes, I instantly made a beeline for her room during our shared free periods. Her and I came to have so many inside jokes because of all the time we spent together. Mrs. Gerbasi helped ignite my passion for history, and she did this by making her class fun and engaging, like when we would talk about historical figures, silly little quirks, like Napoleon Bonaparte being afraid of cats, or when we would find funny YouTube videos to help us remember the Chinese dynasties. By pursuing a career in history, I want to help people realize that it is important to know history, critical to learn from it, but it's also fun and engaging, just like she did. And when doing anything with history, the 4-way test is something one must understand. Firstly, is it true? The biggest question that plagues historians. I mean, think of all the lies you were told, like Christopher Columbus being a good guy, or smoking being good for you. George Orwell once said, in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. When looking at history, everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt, and historical figures cannot be idolized. When doing this, a better connection between past and future is formed. When you think, is it true? You tie it to today with mass media as well. I mean, look at all the misinformation that goes around. When you look at the news and you ask yourself, is it true? You also ask, is it fair? Is it fair to put certain historical figures on pedestals because you're told so? Or should you really be forming your own opinions? And when you form your own opinions, you challenge yourself not only to think critically, but for yourself. And when you do this, there are going to be divides, but that should not create disrespect. And this is where the media comes in. When opinions come in. People are going to watch what coincides with their opinion, but I think that breeds mistrust and hate. That is the beauty. Just because someone has a different opinion than you, that doesn't make theirs wrong, just as it doesn't make yours right. That is the beauty of treating all with dignity, despite skirmishes with views. This is where fairness comes in. To quote Mrs. Gerbasi, it is okay to disagree with each other. That is how we find new solutions to our problems and talk about our disagreements and bring our perspectives together and talk about them. Now, how does knowing history create goodwill? When we learn history, we connect our past and our future, and we become accountable for our past mistakes. When goodwill is formed, when we realize what is done, but what hasn't happened can now be changed. A goodwill between our past and our future is a necessity for success. Henry Ford once said, "The greatest mistake is the one from which we learn nothing." By not acknowledging the crucial mistakes of the past, the future cannot reach its full potential. Finally, is learning history beneficial? Absolutely. Everything and everyone is the product of a complex human experience throughout centuries. By knowing patterns and how we came to be, our current ideals and goals become easier to unpack. We realize that the people of the past, like Genghis Khan or Winston Churchill, were real, complex, and certainly not perfect people like us today. And we realize that we have more in common with the past than we realize. To quote Michael Chitrin, "If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree." Because of Mrs. Gerbasi, I learned that history is more than memorizing what happened in America in 1812 or France in 1789. I learned that history is there to learn from, analyze, but most importantly, laugh at. And when doing anything with history, the four-way test is something one must know. Thank you.